Hi, it's Ronald Off the Record, adding an introduction to my reaction and post-analysis of Stranger Things 5, Episode 7, The Bridge. I'm also known as the Byler Lawyer for being a lawyer who has made long-form videos demonstrating how the show 100% prepared a romantic relationship between Mike and Will. Instead, the show queerbaited, cynically and cruelly using Byler to draw in queer and queer-friendly viewers, and came up with an ending that left many loose ends hanging, contradicted Mike, Will, and Elle's character arcs, and ultimately was a disservice to all their characters. So why am I posting these reactions when I was ultimately wrong about my predictions about Mike and Will? First of all, I was only mostly wrong, as they still live on in subtext, and there are many general audience members who came out of the finale thinking Mike and Will were together, proving how compelling and powerful their relationship was. But it's canon that they did not, and there are 3 reasons I still post these videos. First, and you don't have to be a Byler to agree with this, much of the fandom realized after the finale that we overestimated the abilities of the showrunners. I post these videos because I think I demonstrate in my theories and predictions before and after each reaction that I and many fans could have done this season better than the Duffer Brothers. I say things that remembered the questions they had raised in their own story. I was attentive to details, I was trying to build a cohesive and rewarding narrative, and I was predicting a story that furthered the creator's stated mission of uplifting the marginalized and outcast, all of which they did not do. Second, I post these videos to document how the Duffer Brothers, Sean Levy, and Netflix queerbaited us. You will see that this gay lawyer in his 40s who had learned to temper his expectations about queer love in life and in media, who once denied the possibility of Byler and, like nearly everyone, assumed Mike was straight, had been convinced, and had been making videos about it, that Byler would happen. Convinced by what the showrunners had done, as documented by me and many other creators, and by the fact that the creators did not dismiss Byler would happen for years, waiting only until the end of the show before making clear it would not happen. Up through the final minutes of the finale, I still maintained hope and still saw narrative through lines through which Byler could still happen. The Duffer Brothers are now on record claiming that they knew 10 years ago that Byler would not be canon, which, if true, would make their crime even worse because they did nothing to dismiss the speculation for years. They acknowledged that they were aware of the Byler fandom and had the gall to call the mostly queer fans who make up this ship noise to be blocked out. This is all a failed attempt at gaslighting, and they proceeded to do even more to build up Byler in Season 5. They had Will again have hope that Mike returned his feelings after Will gave up on Mike at the end of Season 4. They had Robin tell Will, and us the audience, what signs to look for and to look for a snowball building up into an avalanche. They included Mike and Will's childhood flashbacks. They made sure Mike and Elle did not show signs of intimacy before Elle's final moments. They inserted gay sexual references and undeniable Easter eggs to the Byler fandom, all while the lie about Will's painting to Mike at the end of Season 4 was unresolved. When all of us knew that Mike could only say he loved Elle when Mike fell in love with Will's feelings and Will's painting, all of which he falsely attributed to Elle, all of which is thoroughly documented in my videos. They did all of this knowing that they would eventually betray us in what feels like a massive homophobic hazing of the queer community. Never has there been such a long-running, calculated, and malicious queerbait. Lastly, I post these videos from a time before I knew that this would be a queerbait, for the obvious reason, to make clear that we Bylers have nothing to be ashamed of. It's the Duffer Brothers, Sean Levy, and Netflix who do. We follow the story that the Duffer Brothers made it look like they were telling and never dispelled. My theories and predictions that I make in these videos are evidence of their failings as writers, and my hope is a chronicle of their cruelty. Now on to this episode. My time is limited, so I only had time to edit my reaction to some of the scenes, but I do include, of course, the divisive coming out scene. As always, my full reactions are on my Patreon, but I also share my own coming out story, as you'll see. Those of you who know me will be probably surprised that I actually was not mad at the coming out scene at first. I understood that what Will was doing was girding himself against Vecna. It was only afterward, after I thought about it and saw some comments from others, that I had a number of criticisms that I share in the post-analysis. And apparently this is the show's lowest rated episode. It seems like it's coming mostly from homophobes who gave it 1-star reviews, and also from people who pointed out some strange choices in the writing, and I point out some of them myself. I think another factor was that this was purely a setup episode getting people ready for the finale, and people had to wait for that last episode. Strangely enough, for me, outside of Byler, I had an overall positive view of Volume 2 and this episode. I'm weird sometimes. I tend to be very critical of shows and things I look at on the one hand, but also sometimes I kind of go along for the ride. And a lot of the popular criticisms out there about plot holes and inconsistencies and plot armor, I kind of accept with the genre this show seems to be going for, and I'm mostly focused on empathizing with the characters. Also, I avoided online discourse, and I was also not aware when I did my post analysis here of an interview where the Duffer Brothers said that Mike was Will's Tammy, and a crush that he needed to get over. Meanwhile, like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to post my reactions to the remaining episodes. Also, I'm reacting to Heated Rivalry, and I'm going to be reacting to other shows and broadening my content. And you should support my Patreon if you want to have a voice in what I do next. Also, I plan some more critiques on the Duffer Brothers and Stranger Things, including condemning them not just for queerbait, but also for fomenting homophobia and doing nothing to stop it. Also, the mixed reaction to Season 5, I think, ultimately is rooted in the ultimately conservative messages that the show actually promoted, with huge missed opportunities, of which Byler was only one. Alright, so on to the reaction and analysis. Hi, it's Ronald off the record. Today I'm going to be watching episode 7, The Bridge, of the 5th season of Stranger Things. I am really excited because I'm also known as the Byler Lawyer, the lawyer who makes videos about the possibility of a romance between Mike and Will. And really, if this is the episode where we find out whether it's going to happen or not. So I'm also nervous today. So who am I? I am Ronald off the record. I'm a lawyer with the civil rights group BAM, By Any Means Necessary. I make video about entertainment I enjoy. I try to bring analysis and heart to the conversation. I, in my reactions to episodes, also try to analyze what I'm seeing and try to predict the future. So I kind of have a different approach to reactions that you might enjoy. First, I'm going to talk about the A-plot, what might happen there, and then I'm going to talk about Byler. And I got to say about the A-plot, I got to open with saying that I am confused about what the hell is going on with Karen Wheeler. It did not seem like something she would do and suddenly be badass all of a sudden. It also didn't kind of make sense character and story-wise for her to rescue people not in her family. And my theory is that somehow the superpowered kids, Callie, is letting people see what she wants them to see. And my theory is that that's Elle who walked in at the end. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. A lot of the gang is going to be reunited. They are going to be able to cook up a new plan. They have a lot of info to talk about now. Max knows that Holly and 11 other kids are in Camazotz, and between what she knows and what Will has seen, they're going to figure out that there are 12 kids, including Holly, that have that tentacle. They, I think, will figure out that they're in Dimension X, especially if Dustin comes back, because he remembers the Demogorgon kind of making another jump in the Upside Down to some other place. Max also knows that, I don't know about this actually, whether Max will know about Henry's plan that he explained to the kids about merging dimensions together, and also learned about Henry's cave, that being his traumatic memory and the origins of Henry. I don't know what they'll do with that information, honestly, but it'll be clear that the plan that needs to happen is to somehow rescue those 12 kids, not only to save the kids, but also to deny Vecna his 12, that he plans to do some big evil thing with on November 6th, today. Okay, if Dustin comes back, he'll understand that the Upside Down is a bridge to Dimension X. Okay, now does Holly escape? She returns to her body in Dimension X, or with a tentacle. I don't know if she's going to be able to wake up from that. If she is, then she'll escape. Well, I don't know what she does with that, though. I'm not sure she's going to wake up. That's my theory. Because how could she even communicate things with the gang? She's just going to be lost in the middle of nowhere. So my guess is she doesn't wake up. We'll see. Okay, so on to Byler. But I think I'm going to check off another thing on my bingo card. Mike and Elle are not connecting. I'm going to check that off because of that conversation that they had. Mike was demanding to know what Holly was talking about, and Elle wasn't sharing. And even what she did say, she wasn't being explicit about the full truth, about having to possibly die. So she's not seeing him as a partner in the most important questions of her life. She's talking about those more with Hopper and Holly, it would seem. And also what she said about, this isn't one of your campaigns, she suppresses the idea of Mike being a leader Mike. She kind of doesn't see that. And whereas Will does. It wasn't really to accomplish any goal. It just seemed a bit off. Will have that conversation with Robin. He's thinking of coming out to people. And that'll be interesting to see. He may come out to Joyce. Well, that's my prediction. And or to the group. And he may come out to Mike, which would be very interesting, of course, for Byler people who are watching. How is Mike going to respond? And it's going to force a reckoning. So last episode, I was pretty anxious, as I expressed, about whether Byler's going to happen because there wasn't much development. On the other hand, Will was unconscious and didn't have much time to interact with Mike. And apparently most of Noah's scenes are with Finn this season. All right, so yeah, this is episode 7. Okay, finally, I will watch the episode. Okay, the bridge. Max wakes up?
I didn't even need it. I just needed you.
Holy shit. Law.
Alright. So apparently Karen Wheeler just became badass overnight. I don't know. I think it would have made more sense for them to have somehow rescued themselves instead of that. It was kind of random. Okay.
Turns out that shield generator of yours
isn't really a shield generator, yeah, we know.
Well, you think that would have been good information to share?
Good information. Nancy, you took action! You're... You didn't check in with them. She would have been able to say what it looked like, and maybe Dustin would have come up with some new theory, And where's Will? I don't know where Will is. Unless that's Karen Wheeler... not really Karen, and it's actually Will in Mike's arms. And Collie's making it look like Karen. I still don't accept that's Karen Wheeler, I'm sorry. Why is Will alone?
I was weak, and he knew he could control me.
None of what happened is your fault.
You're wrong. You're wrong, Mom. It's my fault.
No.
Will. This is different from his not accepting. I mean, he had his breakthrough in Sorcerer, but he's learning new information that he didn't know before, that he has been key to Vecna all along. I still am unclear on how the tunnels have helped him, but bottom line is Will feels responsible, and he is going to want to undo everything because he's Will. And now his love before in Sorcerer, then it gave him strength to fight, but here his love is going to make him decide to die or sacrifice himself. Anyway, that's what I think. And then who's going to be prepared to let him make that decision, And Joyce and Mike would not. So all the rifts are gates, apparently. Didn't think of that.
Max.
So, I leave you alone for a second. And
So I just gotta say, Will gave Max a proper hug. Everybody else needed to give her a hug, but Will knows what's up.
Hey, Dustin?
Yeah.
Hey, about,
Did he really mean that about Eddie?
I thought I said earlier. It's not okay. Well, I got angry about it.
Did you get jealous?
I really missed you. I missed my best friend.
Oh.
Yeah, I miss my best friend too.
Oh. So I guess Steve just was saying bullshit to get him angry, I suppose. Yeah. Just finding a way to make Dustin as angry as possible. When Steve shouldn't have done that. Steve should have known a lot better.
If it fails, we both go down.
You die, I die.
Oh, it's a callback.
You die, I die.
All right. They don't have a romance, but they have a bromance. Steve doesn't have a romance, but he has a bromance. This is his end game.
When Vecna attacks, he weakens you, turning your own mind against you. So I fought back by focusing on happy memories when I was a kid. And when I was...
This is a coming out scene? Is he gonna talk about Mike?
But he found a way past.
How?
And he showed me things, Mom. He sees everything, Mom. He sees my secrets. But I think you need to know the truth.
Vecna has secrets, so Will's gonna try to use Vecna's secrets to weaken Vecna. But Will needs to be stronger, so maybe he's coming out to her? Oh, interruption trope. Mike?
Sorry. We just heard from Hop. He's 15 minutes out, so we should probably leave in 5. Is everything okay?
Yeah, we'll be out in a minute.
Mike's gonna overhear. What?
I think you need to hear this too. Everyone does. I wanted to be like everyone else. I'm like you in almost every way. Literally all the same things. I don't like girls.
They're like, whatever. Robin!
I mean, and I had this crush on someone, even though I know they're not like me. He's just my Tammy, and by Tammy I mean it was never about him. It was about me, and I thought I was finally okay with myself. Today, Vecna showed me what would happen if I did this, if I told you guys. And in this future, some of you are just worried for me. It just makes me feel like something's wrong with me.
You gotta listen to me. You'll never lose me. Ever.
No.
And you'll never lose me.
Or me.
Or me.
Alright. Apparently I was wrong thinking that Will's takeaway was to go for Mike. Apparently he did give up. However, I don't think that's... Anyway, I think there are problems with that message, as I said in my videos. We'll see. So that kind of distracted me, and so I didn't hear the second part of what he said.
But then I realized he's...
That was... Now Mike knows. Mike knows now. Now, we'll see if this... Anything... That was a confession right there. I mean, not confession, but Mike now has it... Now knows. My god, what's gonna happen? What the hell? Wait, sorry. Mike? I don't know. I'm looking at Mike again. Is it my Byler pilled brain? But his swallow seems a little more intense than the other's expressions.
We just drift apart more and more and more and more and more.
Like there's something he wants to say, but isn't saying it. Am I reading too close? I don't know.
You'll never lose me.
Hug him. I'm gonna share when I came out. I'd come out to my sister already, but I told myself I was not going to turn 18 before coming out to my mom. And so I think it was the day before my 18th birthday. It's like I was on a timer or maybe a few weeks or months. But I told her, I started by saying, will you always love me? And my mom and I are too. She was never someone you would ever really communicate with. She would speak in Tagalog, usually with my dad. We've never really had much heart-to-heart conversations growing up. And I asked her, will you always love me no matter what? And she said yes. And of course she would, as my mom. And I said, I must have just said it because I'm gay. And I don't know what happened first, me crying or her hugging me. And then there's not much else to the story, but she did say, be careful because, everyone thinks about AIDS. And but she just made clear she loved me. And that's always your biggest fear. Losing the people you love. Anyway, straight people don't know the stuff. I mean, everyone has challenges, but you think you're going to lose the people you love. It's just so terrifying. My mom's no longer with me now. And people who've watched probably know I'm kind of like a mama's boy. I was very close to my mom. And so that was the biggest coming out for me. And this just takes a lot of courage on Will's part to just come out to so many people at once. And he's also girding himself up to take on Vecna. I think that's what this is about. I gotta say, for those who still have Byler hope, this is kind of like Sorcerer, where it seems like it's resolved. But there's still, like, why would the resolution between Mike and Will just be Will assuming Mike's not that way? That just seems cheap. You know? We have the painting light planted and stuff. And now that Mike knows that Will likes Mike, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Is that it? That's it. Oh, wow. All right. I'm going to save my thoughts, of course, for post-analysis. However, I'm going to say what I'm thinking, that if the message was gay people should accept their self-acceptance means they don't get to go for their love interests the way straight people do, that's a fucked up message. Because simply because Mike's dating a girl, or was dating a girl at least, doesn't make him straight. Like, what? How does Will just conclude that? And we still have the painting lie. So my Byler meter has gone down significantly because this problematic message and queer baiting might have happened. However, there's just so much deliberateness to everything we've seen in the show. So, okay, that's it for now. So most of you who are watching this will have already seen the ending, and so will have an advantage over me. I've done a little more than in previous episode analyses, looked at some of the internet discourse around it. Yeah, there's a lot of negative feedback, opinions about this episode coming from many different quarters, and I don't understand them all. It's the lowest rated episode on IMDb, and I think part of that is people who are disappointed Byler fans, or some of them, but I think the majority are homophobes who don't like the fact that there was a coming out scene. Fuck them. That's what I have to say. So I do have some nitpicks, though, and one thing, I've had a number of criticisms of some decisions that the show has made that have kind of had the caveat of, well, maybe when we see the end, we'll see there was a reason for that. There's one thing I am unambiguously against, which is the whole Karen saving everybody at the end of episode 6, where she used that oxygen tank. First, there's a few things plot. It didn't make sense. How did she know that they would be in a laundromat that would have an oxygen, what she can use an oxygen tank in, and for her to be, so physically capable after what had happened to her? And also, none of her family was there in that group of people she saved. It was kind of random. I can see her having a moment where Mike is there and she's just determined to save her own son. That would have had more emotional content. Instead, it was just kind of a deus ex machina where our, quote, heroes are just sitting ducks and doing nothing to save themselves, only for fate to save them. They should have saved themselves. That would have been a better decision. Karen being there ended up not accomplishing much. They put her back to bed. So that's something I have a clear opinion on. Also, I've had this criticism in the past where, while I don't think the show has to kill off characters, I don't appreciate it crying wolf a lot and it presenting what would normally seem to be death, like very dangerous situations, like crashing a plane while flying to Russia, and you're kind of numb because you know they're not going to kill anybody. So, example, Holly falling 1,000,000 feet from Dimension X down into the Upside Down, like that was, and then to have that taken back. Or at the very end of this episode, having everybody drive through the Max Z, and there must have been 50, 100 bullets shot into that truck. Not a single person hit. Anyway, I guess it's the genre, but I think it can be overdone, and I think it's overdone by this show. Also, I'm unclear how the Upside Down was created. My theory was that Dr. Brenner created it. That's why his journal mapped it out, and his map mapped it out. And Dustin told Elle that her making contact with the Abyss and the Demogorgons created it, or at least was implied. And that doesn't make sense to me. Because, okay, who brought the exotic matter to stabilize the wormhole? Like, when did that come in? I have to think that was Dr. Brenner. Okay. Also, there remains no explanation for why November 6th is an important date. And I think that needs to be answered. And I think it's going to be a big revelation that I don't have any predictions for. It's the date Will was taken. It's the date that the play happened in 1959, the production of Oklahoma, quote unquote, where Henry gives in to the Mind Flayer. Okay, so what would solve the problem of Elle's blood if she doesn't die? Well, I think there's something super and magical that will happen that's hard to predict before the actual episode, and that's going to have something to do with Will. And I'll talk about Will later. So I just want to show a little scene that there's going to be a death scare for Will. All right, you see that drawing of the 2 dimensions? Will's face is right in the middle of the exotic matter, suggesting that Will, who had tentacle stuff go down his throat, might have some of this exotic matter, whatever the fuck it is, or have a similar function as the exotic matter, where his existence is key to the Upside Down for some reason. And remember, he was abducted on November 6th, the night or the day that the Upside Down formed. I think there'll be some revelation where it would seem that Will dying would be key to destroying the Upside Down or protecting the real world from the Abyss. Let's get to my questions. I just put out a video today on my channel, basically just reiterating why there's people should still have hope for Byler, but also more directed at the creators of the show, the Duffer Brothers, Sean Levy, and Netflix, that this would be the most elaborate queer bait of all time if Byler weren't to happen. And that there's a problem with sending a message that gay self-acceptance means it's completely just, what is it? I said hugging yourself. Maybe it's not the perfect analogy, but it kind of is, that it's completely, that you're a safe gay person. And I might say more on it later, but the whole idea of, I'm just like you and I'm not threatening. It's really kowtowing to the prejudices that are unfounded against gay people. And it's also condescending to say that, well, this person, Mike, who has been ambiguous, who the show has not confirmed is straight, you should just give up. And you don't have, as a gay person, the same right as straight people do to explore and find romantic relationships. River says, do you think Will's arc is finished? No, it's not finished. Why would it be finished before the finale? And when his arc, when he's the central character, one of the central characters, if not the central character of the season, and his coming out arc is central to the season, it doesn't make sense for it to be finished now. Like, what would the confrontation with Vecna be? Will just snapping his fingers and winning? No, there's going to be a back and forth. Martin Lederman, how do you explain the sudden change in Mike's behavior? It seemed to me that as the story was progressing between episodes 5 and 6, Mike stopped acting towards Will as even his platonic best friend. How is this supposed to make any sense to us as the audience, and what the Duffers might have intended by showing us such a drastic change in Mike's attitude? I didn't really notice it much. Episode 6, Will was unconscious and also in a trance. I would have appreciated seeing Mike showing some concern for Will the way Joyce was. I think there's a possible arc where Mike has emotionally shut down this season. We saw him reacting in a muted way when his parents almost died and when his sister was kidnapped. And I think there's a hidden arc here of Mike thinking that, I said this in my Tumblr post, that his takeaway from Will's speech about being the heart and being a leader is that he should be Mike the Brave, and that he subscribes to a conventional masculine idea of what being a masculine stoic hero is, not showing emotion, not showing fear, which to some extent you need to when you're a leader to other people. In his conversation with Holly, he was downplaying monsters and saying, I just think about myself as Mike the Brave. I just kind of enter a fantasy. And his leadership that he's provided this season has been always very optimistic. He suppresses his fear, his engaging with the real dangers. And that was also expressed with Elle telling him that there isn't always a happy ending. Sean Levy said that he has some emotional content he deals with this season. And I saw a comment on Tumblr, a very popular one, saying we demanded a lot of emotional content from Finn. And then it says Finn refused to do so. I'm butchering it. It probably is going to happen in the finale because Sean Levy said that. If it happens, and if it's also true that what Noah said, that most of his scenes are with Finn this season, which, by the way, like, what the fuck? Like, we're 7 episodes in, and he's had plenty of scenes with Joyce and with Robin, but he spent most time of the other actors with Finn. Like, what are we talking about? But if Mike has a crash out in the presence of Will, his best friend, which I have to say, their best friendship hasn't been, besides the conversation in the field, it hasn't been expressed much. And, you know, it's a core relationship to this show. I think for it not to come up, heck, even if Byler is platonic, then not to highlight how important this relationship is would be a real failing on the writer's part. Hopefully they don't make that mistake. Things might get too horrible, and he crashes out, and Will says, who knows, you know, masculinity doesn't involve suppressing your emotions. Being a hero doesn't have to do that. You know, you can see him comforting Mike and say, no, I didn't tell you you were the brave. I told you were the heart. Anyway, I get emotional thinking about it. I'm just not sure it's as obvious that he had this change, because I've seen things dropped by this show. So I'm just not quite sure it was a deliberate choice, let's say. But what do you think of the coming out scene? It has gotten a lot of backlash from everyone, Bylers, GA, homophobes, etc. Noah's acting shone through it all, and I think that's what saved it for me. Still, I think it could have been handled better. When it was just Joyce and Will, I was so excited. Then Mike came and I became overjoyed. I had that same reaction. You saw my reaction. Then Will said everybody does, and I was very confused because it seemed out of character for him. I think what happened is what we saw on screen. There were 5 minutes left. And Will's original plan was to come out only to his mom. So I think that's what happened in lore. Now, why have that as a writing decision, though? I think that was perhaps a flawed decision because it wasn't very realistic, I think, to come out to your mom and a lot of other people at the same time. I mean, it would have been very, very emotional to have a one-on-one coming out with Joyce. There's a lot that you feel like you don't want to disappoint your parents, and you want to still have their love and don't want them to think less of you. And this could have been more raw and deeper, gotten into those emotions. And it ended up being a bit Hollywoody and superficial. His own mother saying, "You won't lose me," and then everyone joining in chorus. And this is one of my criticisms of the show, you know, things gotta go. A-plot's gotta go. Buffy remains my favorite show because I think it does have some more. And I say this not saying it's there's not a lot of TV shows I'm exposed to. I'll just say this about the shows I'm familiar with, but there's time for character moments and aside from the A-plot, and to let, you know, see how people relate to each other and how their relationships and how they as people change as they deal with the bigger events going on. It's gotten a lot of backlash from everyone. Some of these people who criticize it, including people who say, leave comments on YouTube like, "The party, we must save the world. Will, I am gay." Like ridiculing his coming out, first of all, so that's homophobic. But also completely being daft and stupid and not catching the fact that he's doing this to protect himself and gird himself against Vecna, to deny Vecna a weapon against him. And it might have made more sense for Will to have a coming out with Joyce and then to have this explanation to the group so that they would all know why it was being said. Because otherwise, you know, a Murray and a Collie would be kind of like, why are you telling me this? Like, isn't this a bit too public? Oh, and I joked on the live chat that it would have been funny if at the end of his coming out, they find out that the radio station was broadcasting it to Olive Hawkins. It would be kind of similar to Ellen's big coming out scene.
Why can't I say the word? I mean, why can't I just say, Susan, I'm gay?
Goat Whisperer says, what do you think of Collie's role in Elle's life? How do you think the Elle, Hopper, and Collie conflict will be resolved? Speaking of glossing character development, I think more genuine fondness between Elle and Collie would have been called for to make Collie not seem like just this villain constantly menacingly walking towards Hopper and other people and saying things people don't want to hear, to make her more sympathetic, share some of their shared trauma, you know, and maybe remembering a moment or two being in the lab together. I don't know. I think that Hopper will be in conflict with Collie, obviously. However, this is Elle's decision. And there'll be a daughter-father moment where Elle's insisting that she makes her own decisions, and Hopper's not willing to accept it. I just don't see how Hopper prevents Elle from making her own decision. Nicole Connolly writes, diluting Will's love for Mike down to a Tammy kind of classroom crush really raises some inconsistencies for me. Could Robin have killed 3 demos with memories of Tammy? 24 hours ago, Will asked Robin for signals with a sense of hope and was actively flirting with Mike. Now suddenly he's back to, quote, accepting a rejection that hasn't blatantly happened? Do you think this is bad writing on behalf of the Duffers or an intentional writing choice? I think it could be either, but I think it's an intentional writing choice. Will had 5 minutes and he needed to... He was focused on denying Vecna one weapon. I think he was not fully honest in this quote coming out, and he was doing what seemed expedient. Him actually being honest to Mike was too scary. He might be rejected by Mike. That would make him unprepared for Vecna. So I think he just had to get that out of the way, get that out there, and go with this Tammy narrative. Fox, it kind of really upset me that the message here seems to be that queer people should just be happy with loving themselves. Agreed. As if that should be our ultimate goal in life. And what seemed weird to me, and I would like to know your opinion on, is that Max said that her way out of Camazotz was her feelings for Lucas. Yep, I had that thought too. And she didn't need Kate Bush anymore. But somehow for Will, he needs to cut himself loose from the one he likes, Mike, loves, to be able to defeat Vecna. It makes no sense to me how these two messages could exist in the same place and sends weird messages, in my opinion. Because so, as a straight person, you can rely on your partner and your love for them to save you. But as a queer person, you should just get over it and love yourself. It's sad to me that for straight media, loving yourself and accepting yourself almost always means that you get the girl or the guy in the end. Like it's treated as just a stepping stone to the ultimate culmination of the story, which is finding a romantic partner. But it's just sad that it seems to be that queer characters get cut off halfway through, and we get told to be happy with that. Be happy with the fact that we allow you to not hate yourself anymore. I see the bitterness there. As if we don't crave to be loved as well. As if humans are not built to want to be loved, and we are somehow different and just okay with being alone, as long as we don't actively hate ourselves. If they don't conclude this well, I think that's a very problematic message and a very sad ending to the story. I agree. My conclusion was wrong, which I actually don't think was wrong in hindsight, that Will had concluded that Mike was his Vicky in episode 4. I was disappointed that my theory was wrong because I made this statement publicly that he has resolved to pursue Mike. However, on the other hand, he did kind of was exploring pursuing Mike, as was said in the comment in episode 5 when he talked to Robin. Yeah, I was just confused, honestly. That's where I was at. And finally, what do you think about Will saying, I had a crush on someone, specifically his use of the word crush? I understand that he's not going to admit to a room of people he's been in love with Mike, but to us, the audience, it's apparent Will has been in love, yes. But what if this is all the conclusion we ever get on their story? Is that satisfying? We don't know if it's the conclusion of their story. But if it is, fuck you, Duffer Brothers and Sean Levy and Netflix, because this was the love of his life. And it would be showing real disrespect to gay love to reduce it to that. There we go. Miles says, the only thing I liked about the coming out scene was the acting. I'm not happy with the writing. Watching it for the first time, I even thought this might be a fantasy Vecna placed into Will's mind to numb him somehow. That everyone is so welcoming is realistic in the late 80s? Hardly. Well, I think in this context, with the group and with his close friends would absolutely unconditionally love him. However, one of the things I didn't like after Volume 1 was that bullying, anti-gay bullying, and the 80s and the AIDS crisis weren't in the forefront. To dramatize how courageous Will had to be to do what he's doing. I think Season 1 had some more bluntness around that and honesty about that than this season did. That's something I also have a kind of clear opinion on, that they could have highlighted that more. Overall, I think it's sanitized and a bit Disney-fied, the lack of homophobia we see. And I had hoped that there had been a return of the theme of being bullied for the core four, but they decided, again, A-plot, to have them already in episode 1 having gained the courage to confront their bullies and push them back. Ronald, your Karen theories are wild. I think what was wilder was what happened, honestly. Sean Callahan says, to me it looks horrific that Will came out due to threat of his abuser outing him. I'm a little confused by the abuser outing him. I think that if Vecna defeats Will this way, it wouldn't necessarily be outing him. What Vecna's goal is to snap Will's limbs. And no one else would necessarily know about this. But I think I see your objection that this was supposed to be, his coming out should be an empowering moment. And here it feels forced by circumstances. I will agree that it didn't feel empowering, and I have some thoughts on that. At the same time, it was fucking courageous for Will to do this. He was defeated. He's taking on the big bad. And his last encounter with Vecna kicked his ass and had control over him. And Will's taking him on. He is a badass. And he's doing this to strengthen himself for what's ahead. So, and that's a thing that I really, some of the comments online piss me off about. Like, there's a lot of disrespect about Will. They liked him when he's snapping limbs, but not when he's showing this kind of courage. What do you think about Mike putting on the butthole surfers? That was going to be one of my little things that I found out. Butthole surfers, yes, is another crude gay reference. And is another thing that they didn't have to put in. Hello? Like, why do you put that in? It also shows that he likes punk, which Will likes. Okay, I'm going to stop this recording. I need to take a break. All right, I'm back, and there's Megan. Hi, Megan. All right, here we go. Soph says, how would I want Will's storyline to be wrapped up if Byler does not happen? I don't want it wrapped up in any other way. I mean, it would be epilogue boyfriend, but that just sends the wrong message to queer people. And if Mike accepts him for who he is, as a platonic friend, they should have fucking done that a year ago. Okay, KT Lee says, what would your feelings be if this was them wrapping up Will and Mike? What do you think Mike's arc is if not Byler? But I think if Byler doesn't happen, he doesn't really have an arc. It's just about the fear of losing Elle. And it would be kind of meh. Okay, my villain meter. It is currently only at 20%. I was correct that Will would be tormented by the idea of feeling like he's been serving Vecna, that he's a monster, and wanting to right the wrong. And so I think he's going to be driven to sacrifice himself because he could continue to still be part of the evil somehow, but also his general wanting to, make penance for what he unwittingly had participated in. That's already happened. However, the idea of him being triggered to do something evil or to be made to believe he's done something is less necessary now because he's already had this turmoil with himself. So I put it down to 20% just because it's less necessary. However, I still keep it at 20% because final battle, Vecna needs some kind of counter move to Will now that he apparently is powered up with, gay acceptance power, the power of hugs and his group coming out. Vecna needs some kind of a counter move, and yeah, it isn't fully revealed what Will's usefulness to Vecna is. We find out at the end of season 4 that El was key to Vecna getting his powers and opening the gates. So it's not out of the question for there to be something for Will revealed in this last episode. All right, my Byler meter is currently, my thermometer needs to, okay, it's at 70%. It has lowered, yes, for obvious reasons. I don't know, it's hard to put a number to this. It's more like 2 opposing arrows. It's like, it's just everything we've seen points in one direction, but also in another direction. Just the accumulation of all the evidence, especially the painting lie. Now, I know it's possible that the reason for this accumulation of evidence is that, at least through season 4, the Duffers have wanted to make Byler endgame, and that there's a possibility that Netflix clamped down and told them not to carry it out, which would suck. But my counter to that theory is that if that were true, there would still be the same onus on the Duffer brothers, who claim to be politically progressive, to dispel rumors about Byler long before this final episode. So that doesn't fully explain what's going on. Even if Netflix shuts it down, the Duffers wouldn't have to expose that fact by dispelling it the way the creators of Wednesday did. So I'm going to cover some factors that are against Byler happening. First, there's very little time. I had said, on the one hand, that the culmination of Byler could very well be in the finale. However, I had thought in that scenario that there would have been more hints of a snowball before then, which we haven't really had since the beginning of episode 5. We've had basically Will in having scenes with Joyce, and not with Mike. We even had Will have frickin' scenes with Max, of all people. I mean, I love Max, but Will having more interactions with Max than with Mike is kind of criminal, unless they're saving stuff for the end. Not even to have an exchange with Will about the fact that he's a sorcerer. There should have been that scene, to be honest, and how awesome it is. And Will thanking Mike for believing in him, and vice versa. If the show continues to neglect through the very end of the series Will's relationship to his best friend since kindergarten and the love of his life, that would be a serious writing mistake. Now the coming out scene, there were issues with it. There's also people coming from a progressive standpoint saying that it was not a coming out scene that was very realistic or empowering. Okay, and then it was off to me that Will was there suffering and crying about his insecurities. One of the people on my Discord said it was kind of a humiliation exercise, because I'm thinking of the fact you're Joyce and your son is right there crying. You wouldn't let him cry. You would hug him immediately and tell him to shut up, stop, don't think those thoughts. I love you and you're never going to lose me. And I love you till the end of, with my whole being. And also perhaps including a kind of new already, because Joyce did praise his rainbow ship in season 2. And to be honest, a lot of the characters who know Will well probably had suspected at least. I mean, that would have been assuring too. And, I think that these are very common things you hear when people come out. It would have been a little more realistic, I think. But, instead, Joyce is saying, no, Will, you're not going to lose me, and, making an arguments to him when he's, breaking down in front of, 15 people. It was weird. And, and then the kind of, Hollywood style, and me, was a kind of, felt trite and hackneyed to me. Him saying that Vecna showed him a nightmare of what would happen if he came out, that people would worry for him, and that would make him feel, I guess in his words, he might say like a freak and even more of a mistake. Didn't ring true with me either. I mean, No. when you're afraid of coming out, you're afraid of people spurning you because they're homophobic. And I think this might have been a symptom of sanitizing being gay in the midst of the AIDS crisis in the 80s. Even among people who probably you should guess would accept you for who you are, you're just so terrified because you're not even fully accepting yourself that you're gay. And one person who might even accept you formally by their words, but will still be, you're probably the first gay person they know at this time. I mean, it's just so terrifying that they're going to have to work through their homophobia. You know, casual homophobia, as we would say in today's lingo. But everyone's trained to think that you're just thinking about sex, something's wrong with you, you're going to get AIDS. That's what people were thinking at the time. And you're just afraid of that. So this idea, they'll be anyway, I just didn't think that rang true to the experience. And then his whole belabored, I do all these things that you guys do, I assume were addressed to the core four. It was kind of a politically conservative coming out. Now, I totally can get it from Will's perspective. He's terrified. And he's only starting to accept himself like 24 hours ago. So I can understand that. However, it didn't have to be so drawn out for the writers to do that, to kind of, be pleading, I'm just like you. Like, what if he weren't like you? What if he liked Madonna? Like, so fucking what? You should accept him, What if he likes to dress, flamboyantly and as you know what I'm saying? The emphasis was on being a, quote, safe gay person for those other people, being someone you can accept for a conservative audience, and someone who's also, accepting that he has no chance with a mic. So this is not gay empowerment, but it's being striving and yearning to be acceptable and tolerated by people. And this was a step back from the apparent message of episode 4. And definitely there'd be a problem if this is where they go with. It could also be a deliberate choice to make this uncomfortable because it's supposed to not feel fully right. Just as Mike's confession of love to Elle at the end of season 4 on the surface seemed to be right, but didn't feel fully right, if you know what I'm saying. In both situations, they were expressing emotion, but not being fully honest. He wasn't fully honest when he said Mike was a crush, that it was about himself, that he didn't have any real feelings and love for Mike, that it was just him projecting onto Mike. That was Will lying. And in a show that values honesty and authenticity, I think that is significant. He's still fucking miserable. He hasn't found joy. He hasn't found the joy of having a romantic partner or being someone who doesn't have a romantic partner but has found joy. He hasn't found either. So this remains a weak point for Vecna to exploit. Okay, now on to the positives. The setup is there. And as I said in my video, it doesn't take a lot of screen time to convince the audience that it was always there. Also, Will has come out of the closet. Not only that, but he has confessed, quote unquote, because it wasn't really a full confession, that Will had a crush on Mike of all people. Then we are objectively closer to Byler. Mike has the information he didn't have before. And there may be a conversation where the painting light comes up where he's connecting all the dots for the first time. Will saying Mike is his Tammy is laughably cheap. For him to just conclude that Mike, simply because he walked away during the field scene, isn't interested in him, it's just cheap. And we know that Mike didn't notice the flirting, and there hasn't been a direct reckoning. This is just completely subjective on Will's part. Now, there's a comment on my recent video that I wanted to share. Andor Solomos wrote on YouTube, Will didn't lie when he called Mike Tammy. He spoke from the truth he is living in right now. And that quiet belief, or rather the loss of belief, is exactly what makes the Byler story so painfully romantic. Will has stopped hoping. just like many of us are starting to let go. There is sadness in that surrender. But the most beautiful love stories have always worked this way. They let hope fade. They let the heart ache. And then at the very end, they turn back and whisper, but yes, he does love you. Tomorrow, we are getting a Byler endgame so overwhelming that we will not just cry, we will fall apart. Tears, breath, everything blurring together, because it will be unbearably beautiful. Hugs. So anyway, this is part of setting up Byler if you want it to be maximally impactful, to have us realize Byler's happening the same time Will is. Another thing I want to mention is Dustin mentioned the prismatic spray spell, which is the gay spell, the rainbow spell that can do a lot of things to people. I think that we're going to get a call back to the prismatic spray spell when Will discovers a new superpower powered by gay love. As it's like, it writes itself. You see what I'm saying? And that could be the magic that could alter the nature of the upside down, the exotic matter, means that Elle loses her powers and doesn't have to die. I don't know what it is. But Vecna chose Will for a reason, because he's a builder, and even mentioned, it was implied in one of the things Vecna said when he was taunting Will against the wall, that he has power. It wasn't clear if that was a power conferred by Vecna or a power that Vecna stole from Will. His coming out journey is not over. Last things I want to say are that the conversation between Jonathan and Nancy shows that the writers value authenticity in relationships, while Malevolent was kept together with a lie, the painting lie. Isn't the painting going to come up again? And isn't this the Cyrano trope? Like, come on. Will just said in passing that he had a crush on Mike. Like, how do you resolve that on either person's end? It would be a heart-to-heart. Because otherwise people have just forgotten their friendship since childhood. So anyway, I've talked a long time. Oh my God, is this 3 hours? The people who should be embarrassed if Byler doesn't happen are the Duffer Brothers and Sean Levy and Netflix, not Byler's.